peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Associated to 2022, elections have dominated the political arena in Kenya for years and months now. President Uhuru Kenyatta, in the recent past, has warned people not to engage in politics, but engage in nation building and development. As much as the president has given these warnings, the people have not heeded to the warnings. The objective of improving the lives of Kenyans is the most important thing that you need to have. Kenyans need to have their lives improved. Kenyans need development instead of campaigns. Kenyans don't eat campaigns. Kenyans need health care, good housing, industries, jobs for younger generation, and above all, infrastructure to be able to transport the goods that they manufacture and the crops that they grow for export. It is therefore very important for the people of Kenya to understand that with development lacking, the country will not prosper. President Uhuru Kenyatta has emphasized again that the only thing that can bring Kenya to a world-standing nation, a developing nation, is prosperity through unity of purpose. If you are not united, you cannot deliver to what other people, other nations went through and got united. Look at Germany, for example. It had a lot of anger after the Second World War. But today, Germany gives us the loans that we share, that we Google. You Google a company in German and you get what you want. We also global their money, hammer it, eat it every day. Some of us through corruption, some of us through extended kickbacks. But Germany had more anger than any other country in the world after the Second World War. Today, it's a healed country. The only message that Kenyans can take from here is a redemption strategy. The only thing that can heal this country is redemption, forgiveness, reconciliation, restitution, and reparations. And above all, truth-telling and accountability that will bring about the word redemption, which is healing. So for now, those who want to have a better Kenya tomorrow, begin the journey now. 1 inch by inch, move together with your president. The nation will be a great nation. Thank you.
Ambaye anapinga mradi huu bila shaka ni mtu mchoyo.
Chenchi inakuja inaonekana kidogo inaumiza, lakini baadaye iko na promise.
Kazi ya mjengo ni kazi kama kazi zingine.
Kumiliki nyumba ni mojawapo ya ndoto muhimu kwa wengi wa Wakenya. Hata hivyo, hii inasalia tu kuwa kitendawili kutokana na changamoto za kifedha. Gharama kubwa ya ardhi, vifaa vya ujenzi na pia utaratibu wa kuidhinisha michoro na ramani za nyumba ni bayana ya vikwazo ambavyo vimekuwa kizingiti kwa Wakenya wengi inapowadia swala la kumiliki nyumba. Mbali na hayo, kuna tabaka ya Wakenya wengi ambao hata wana matumaini yoyote wala kuota kumiliki nyumba. Hawa ni walalahoi ambao ndio idadi kubwa ya Wakenya wasiokuwa na nyumba za kudumu. Kwa wakati huu, Asilimia 65 ya Wakenya wanaishi katika mitaa ya mabanda ambayo haina huduma za kimsingi kama vile mitaro ya kuondoa maji taka, maji safi na barabara za kuingilia katika makazi yao.
Launching the BBI Task Force report. Makofi.
Your Excellency, I am very happy that the document, the recommendations and the proposals that have been put forward informs us on how to build institutions to get our politics away from personalities and ethnicities to institutions that will carry all of us irrespective of who we are, where we come from, the language we speak, or the political party we subscribe to.
Kusema kwamba pesa mingi ije mashinani, tunaunga mkono. Ipelekwe mpaka ifike kama kuanzia 35% kuelekea juu. Hiyo pesa itumike kwa mambo ya maendeleo, not for consumption. Recurrent expenditure should not be above 30%. 70% should go for development.
Ni kwa nini baada ya kila miaka mitano tunaenda miaka mitatu ya kazi, miaka ya 2 tunapoteza kwa sababu siasa imechacha? Tunataka tuulize wafanyabiashara wetu wenzetu, ni nini inawazuia? Ni nini tuwaweza kufanya ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba biashara zenu hazisimami? We must have development plans that are 20 years plus if we are to resolve our problems, my brothers and sisters. Tunataka tuwapatie assurance ya kwamba wanaweza kupatia wananchi mikopo ya miaka 10, miaka 15 kwa sababu they have confidence ya kwamba Kenya will be stable and Kenya will always have leadership, whoever it is.
A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us, wherever you're watching us from. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you are tuned in today. Indeed, it is a very sad day after, of course, the loss of NBA superstar Mr. Kobe Bryant, who died yesterday after a helicopter crash alongside with his 13-year-old daughter and others. I think other 9 people who are also in that helicopter. So the world is in mourning, and a lot of people who are sports fans have been sending their tribute to the family and friends of the late Kobe Bryant. And from Punchline Africa, may his soul rest in peace. But right now, of course, let's look at what's making headline later on across Africa. But first of all, we look at the topic of the day, and that is Jubilee divisions in Jubilee Party. Does it continue to haunt the BBI roadmap? And to help me dissect this topic is none other than Dr. David Matanga, who is joining us via telephone call. So, Doctor, good morning.
Good morning, wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in Africa. Good morning. Thank you very much, viewers. Just as Miriam has said, this is through the satellite link, wherever I am. Good morning.
All right, so a lot of things happened over the weekend. A lot of things is happening, of course, in the Kenyan political scene. And now I'm being told there's a meeting by Jubilee parliamentarians who are meeting in Naivasha to look at some of these things that they want to discuss as a party. And also on the Star newspaper, on one of the front pages there, there's a headline there that says, "Tired of waiting, Ruto allies call for PG." What's happening in the Jubilee party, and is it, is it the biggest hindrance President Uhuru has in terms of realizing his legacy?
Thank you very much, viewers. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you. I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to welcome most of you who are watching Punchline Africa television, the only television that talks frankly, candidly, and delivers the points that every Africans want to hear. I want to be very honest and tell the world that what is happening in the Jubilee Party in Kenya is worrying. The president has said he wants unity of purpose. The president has tried to make sure that this country follows the unity of purpose. And what is happening in this country at the moment is that some MPs and some members of parliament are heading for a situation where they would bring a crisis. And if this goes on as it is, President Uhuru Kenyatta will not be able to get he will not be able to pick up his legacy. So some of us observers, feel so much concerned. What is this that you want to create that is not worthy? What is this that can create chaos? What is this that can bring divisions within the parties? What is this that can, bring in a bad habit? This is a bad habit. Someone is scheming to destabilize the government of Jubilee Party, of the Jubilee Party, destabilize the government of Uhuru Kenyatta. Someone is scheming. Someone is using Machiavellian politics to fragment the system. Someone is using Machiavellian politics to make sure that the president is humiliated, belittling of the president, mutilation of president's name, prostitution of president's name, talking about the president all the time, belittling, making sure that the symbol of unity of that country is the president, who had a symbol, the sword, who have to lead this country. Someone is trying to damage that legacy. And we people who support the legacy, friends of President Uhuru Kenyatta who support the legacy, and the entire people of Kenya who support peace, who see that this type of machinations can create chaos, must stand up and refuse this type to be dragged into this type of arena. And I think it's time the president put up down his feet, stood firm, and told off most of these lingering guys, the guys who linger from one place to the other, to get out, to get their act together, and support the line, the big four, the agenda that the president has set for the people of Kenya.
All right, and in one of the dailies here, the Daily Nation in particular, I see on the front pages there, the headline actually says that Ruto allies retreat to counter Raila wave, and it continues to say, surprise change of heart comes only hours after some leaders in Tanga faction of Jubilee attended rally in Mombasa and pledged to support BBI. Now, the DP supporters say they are uncomfortable with ongoing meetings because Raila and ODM have already branded themselves as the public face. I thought that they were on board on Saturday, or what was going on when Murkomen and the other Tanga leaders attended this meeting in Mombasa, and now they're coming out and saying they're not very comfortable with this meeting, especially because it's Raila who is leading them.
I think time has come, Miriam. If Kenyans don't say it, we shall say it. The deputy president should wake up, stand up, put on his socks, pull them up, tell his group to respect the president. That is the point here. He must do that. If he doesn't do that, then he is the one behind the chaos. And that chaos will come back to boomerang on the entire nation. He should warn his group
He should warn his younger people whom he's allowing to go ahead. They don't have the money to call for that meeting. Who gave them the money to call for that meeting? It is him. Let him take responsibility and tell these people, please, the party needs to heal. The party needs to move forward. You agreed, you went to Mombasa. If he doesn't want to attend all these meetings, there is no need of division. You are brought in outsiders to divide the party. Karwa is not a member of Jubilee party. Karwale is just an offspring of confusion. If you follow him like Kofi Annan. You would have nowhere. You lose like Kofi Annan. You leave that country bloodshed. I am telling you from the experience that I have. And I want to appeal to my fellow comrades in Kenya. Take it slowly. Because we have been here before. You should know that Kenyans need delivery of services. We have been here before. Some of us have spent our own energy, resources, human material, finances to defend you people. We have been there before. Let's not have anything of this nature again. These divisions must end. These divisions are not useful for this country. If you have differences, please respect your leader. I am saying this because I can see nobody is reprimanding these guys when they want to meet. And then somebody comes on TV says, I don't speak for them, but they speak for you. Then why don't you stop them from speaking for you?
All right, and while they continue speaking, I think the DP campus section of the leaders that are allied to the Deputy President have come out and said that Raila's presence poses a threat in the BBI bandwagon. So I don't know, what could be their problem? What is a threat that possibly Raila Odinga poses on the BBI process, having in mind that him and President Uhuru Kenyatta are the architect of this process? Why would he pose a threat? Why would he see him as a threat in this process?
I told you, Miriam, I don't trust him. I have never trusted Kalonzo Musyoka. Never. I'm sorry. And that's my position. You can take me, lock me, kill me, but that is my position. I don't want to be near where his politics is. And those who think that he's with us, you will be shocked. I've never trusted his politics. Never. And I'm honest. As a man with the same age with Kalonzo, he beats me by 2 years only. I have never trusted his politics, because his politics is full of confusion, deceit, betrayal, traitorship, mafikizoloism. I hate politics of that nature, and I have never liked his politics. You can see the section which came out is the same section that aligned to him. You can see what it is. And you guess what? You cannot be like that throughout confusing people. Seeing which side you want to go. I have never politics, and I'm not surprised. I don't know why President Uhuru Kenyatta has kept him. I continue to please him. Even if you please a donkey that does not want to drink water, they will never drink. Time has come for His Excellency to keep his legacy. The little time left for him to keep the legacy up, stand up, defend his legacy. He is not going to enter Jerusalem with anybody. Jesus did not enter Jerusalem with anybody. Jesus entered Jerusalem with a whip on a donkey and whipped all these corrupt idiots that are killing the religion in Jerusalem at that time. He whipped them out. His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta should stand up, whip them out of the temple of God. Because they are causing trouble, he will not go with them. Did Jesus go with disciples to the heaven? No. Kalonzo Musyoka, if you say Ukambani editors are now again confused, I am not surprised. Hello, I am not surprised. I predicted all these things. People, the only problem is that I'm not a Kenyan and the people don't take me serious. It's all right. It's all right. But I have studied political science today. Hey, the highest level in the world. If you want an interview, if you want anything to sit down and exam, we can do it. You cannot beat me on it. This subject is mine. I might not be a Kenyan, but I teach non-Kenyans. And even Bazungu listen to some of the things that I do. I told you that this guy is not a trusted person. And that is the position you will see if the Kambani people are saying they have a problem with Raila. Is Raila not a Kenyan? Raila is a Kenyan. Most of us had more problems with Raila than who had more problems with Raila is myself. But because for the sake of unity, we are working, we work together, we support what the president says. People are not supporting the president, and let them not tell a lie media. That is where we have gone wrong.
All right, thanks so much. So this news piece here on the Standard newspaper, on the Star newspaper, says that tired of waiting, Ruto allies called for the parliamentary Jubilee parliamentary group meeting. It happened yesterday in the night. I don't know what would this mean for the president and the agenda, the 4 agendas.
They are trying to plot an impeachment. I'm sorry to say that. I'm an honest man. I've told people there every time they think I tell lies. Yes, the impeachment can fail, but it will embarrass the president. If we don't say it now, people will say we didn't say it. I've said it. They have been plotting for this. All corrupt people who were caught on corruption charges have been collecting money. They have been collecting money to feed these guys, especially Kuria and Murkomen. Kuria is always a money-hungry idiot who looks for money, who looks to pick money. If he has no money in the pocket, he can even kill you. He can arrange to kill you. I'm telling you. So I know him for a long time, and I'm being honest. If people don't want to hear me, I am here. Come and do whatever you want to do. I have said it, and I'll continue saying it. There is something which is not right in this situation. And that situation is that someone is grooming, is plotting, is scheming a Machiavellian way of removing the president, belittling the president, shaming the president, and failing the BBI. Go to heaven, go to God, go to hell and ask them, come back. Go to Jupiter, come back. That's what they are doing. If they were in Mombasa, then they come and have a meeting at night. Then they said they were waiting. Then they said that is derailing. They want to play by time so that the time for referendum is finished, and then said it was unconstitutional for this thing to be held. That is what do. And a political scientist can see what I'm saying. If those don't say it, I've said. Look at the signs in the sky. Look at the comets that have been there for 7 weeks. Julius Caesar was told by the wife that look at the comets. Look at how 7 weeks, Mr. President, someone is plotting against you. There is a cautious, there is a within us.
All right, and one of the key things that
will you tell you so?
Mm-hmm. All right, and one of the key things that these members of parliament on the Jubilee party, they're expected to be around 160 MPs, and they're saying that what they're going to be discussing there is finding a united position about the BBI. Is it possible now to have a whole 160 members of parliament agree on which way forward in regards to the BBI in Jubilee right now, or this is just something that perhaps might not happen?
How do you go and find a united position when you are insulting one position? Media, how do you go and find a united position when you are saying you don't want Raila? What is united now? You are uniting what? You are uniting hot air or what? A united position from where? Let them just say they want to do what they want to do. Either they oppose the entire thing. The deputy president was in Charangai, in Kitale. You heard what he said there. Did you hear what he was saying in Kitale on the weekend? Mm-hmm. When these other people were in Mombasa, he said a different tone. Let's watch it to kudanganya. What it is just, media, believe me or not, this is just, kudanganya what. This thing is just plotting to molest the president, to make him look like he's a lame duck, then later on isolate him with so many things, then come to push they want to do. This is exactly what they are plotting. And this plot started long with corrupt people collecting money to overthrow the government. I've said that time and time again. Those who are dissatisfied with the corruption that they are taking money from the tenders who were kickbacks are the one trying to destabilize this government. Don't let them not hide under Jubilee. Jubilee has a leader. Jubilee has a Secretary General. The day you formed the Secretary General that they were going to meet, they met as who? As Jubilee, without the authority of the Secretary General. Don't you see the logic? Don't you see the logic? The logic is flowing so fast. And for me, I've done my best. I've said what I can say. May God help me and let him help me. I've done what I could. I have stood by these guys from 2008 up to today. I have never swayed my support against anybody. I have stood firm with them. If God can help them to have a good country, that's all right. And we shall together struggle until we find the unity of purpose and the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right. And of course, there's some information here you've been giving us. And today I see it on the front pages of the Standard newspaper. And it says Uhuru and Raila take handshake to the U.S. prayer talks. And I'll just read a bit of it. And it says that opposition leader says agreement has earned respect globally, with many African countries keen on emulating its powers of transformation. So President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga have been invited to share their experiences on their handshake at a key event in the United States. So the world seems to be appreciating the need and how this handshake has transformed the country, and even other African leaders are keen to emulate, according to this article in the Standard newspaper. Why is it so difficult for it to be very accepted here in the country? And while the president and Raila have been invited to go give a speech in this very important prayer day in Washington in the U.S. earlier February, what do you think DP Ruto is perhaps feeling about this?
First of all, that's why they want to destabilize. Exactly. Miriam, they want, and the viewers, they want to destabilize the whole thing by making it not workable, by making it look like it is not working. The entire thing is working. The international community wants to replicate it elsewhere in the world. Americans are calling the two guys to go there and tell them what it meant to shake hands and what it meant to be part and parcel of opposition versus. You remember, I was telling somebody, a very senior person, professor in political science, that China has no people whom they call MPs. China doesn't have elections, but China lends us money. China lends America money. So because there is no opposition in China, it doesn't mean you cannot develop. Who brought this thing of opposition in Africa when we have no social contract? Africa doesn't have even a social contract to be able to sustain a small bit of what we are doing. We are all the time quarreling. There is nobody paying even the salaries to people in China, in other. The salaries are kept by one person in the office. Retirement packages are not paid. There's no social contract really, Miriam, and Africa still has a long way to go. So if the handshake can be an example, we shall be very grateful. God will give us what it is. Thank you.
All right. And of course, if the two honor the invite, it will mark the first time the two leaders who struck a political truce following the disputed 2017 presidential election will take to the international stage to extol the agreement that united their feuding political camps and which has led to the Building of Bridges initiative. So by the U.S. inviting President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga to the event, which will be taking place in the sidelines of the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, and will be held on February 5th and 6th. Does this mean that this should be like a stamp of approval for what President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila did? And if so, is it something to encourage them to just continue with the BBI process?
This is exactly, you have used the most organized word that this morning takes my rest very properly. Stamp of approval. And anybody can get annoyed because the stamp of approval has arrived. So there are some people, it's like having women who are jealous, even if you buy 2 kilos of sugar for each and in the same paper bag. Believe me or not, anybody who has been in a polygamous home marriage will know that the woman will say the other kilos are bigger than mine. So this is what is happening here. There is someone who is not feeling comfortable and wants to make sure that the BBI is disrupted before it takes off. The handshake is disrupted before it takes off. And the Kenyans know who that person is, Miriam. I want to thank you very much. The viewers are continue doing with what you can do. I am available a few meters away from you, and I can take all the questions if possible anytime. But I will be back tomorrow morning in the studio from Mombasa, and I will be able to tell you exactly what I'm supposed to do.
All right, Dr. Matanga, thank you so much for your time this morning, and thank you for your contribution. Enjoy the rest of your day, and bye-bye for now, and we'll talk to you indeed.
And Miriam, before you go,
yes.
Before you go, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Before you go, I want to wish the people of Biafra, the people of Amazonia, the people of South Sudan. I know you are going to touch on this good subject of South Sudan. I have seen something coming out exactly what I predicted, Miriam. Just tell them to be as they are. Let them stand firm. Let them give no room to anybody, to ego. Let them push the ego aside. Sign the agreement. Otherwise, the United Nations tribunal awaits if they don't sign that agreement.
Well,
thank you very much, and thank you. I can see what is happening in Libya. Exactly is what I told people some 5-6 years ago, that it will take place. I have always stood by Africa. I will always stand by Africa, and never will I be ashamed to speak out for Africa. God bless you.
All right, Dr. Matanga, thank you, and bye-bye for now. That was Dr. Matanga joining us from a different location this morning, and we were just looking at the topic of the day here, which is the divisions in Jubilee Party, which continue to haunt BBI roadmap, and of course they are on the front pages of the Standard newspaper. Uhuru and Raila take handshake to the U.S. prayer talks that is slated to happen on the 5th and 6th of February, and I'm sure that has not made some people very happy because it's an invite only, Let me just read a bit of that on the page 6 of the Standard newspaper, and then we can just leave the Kenya news alone, and now we start talking about the rest of Africa. And President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga have been invited to share the experience on the handshake at a key event in the United States. Now, if they honor the invite, it will mark the first time the two leaders who struck a political truce following the disputed 2017 presidential election will take to the international stage to extol the agreement that united their feuding political camps and which has led to the Building Bridges initiative expected to yield constitutional reforms. Now, reports suggest that Uhuru and Raila have been invited to a sideline event during the 2020 National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, United States, and the two leaders, according to the report, have been invited to a connected event referred to the international lunch slated for February 5th and 6th, and they're expected to talk about the handshake and, of course, the BBI. And speaking during a BBI public consultative meeting at Bukungu Stadium in Kakamega recently, Raila said that he and the president had been invited to Washington for 2 days, and so Let's just see. So just in a nutshell, there'll be a joint keynote speakers for at the international lunch. The event is hosted by the members of the United States Congress, and it is an invite-only affair attended by elite individuals in politics, society, and business. And of course, the event is on the sidelines of the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, and will be on February 5th and 6th there. So thank you so much. And of course, a lot is happening. Of course, still on the front pages of the Standard newspaper, fallout in Jubilee over BBI retreat in Naivasha. I think we've just talked about that, so I'll not even get too much into it. And also on the Star newspaper, Mutunga, I was not bribed over the 2013 Raila case, says blaming judiciary graft war is a diversionary strategy. That is on page 4 and 5, which I think is very interesting. Many years after Mutunga was the Chief Justice of, the Republic of Kenya, and there were claims that he was bribed to make sure that the case, after it was taken to the Supreme Court, Raila lost. So here is coming out, and former Chief Justice William Mutunga is both admired and loathed for his record in the bench of the Supreme Court and his public life. However, a section of the society remembers him mainly for presiding over the 2013 presidential election petition pitting ODM leader Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, the bench upheld Uhuru's win, and politicians have claimed that the ruling was too brief to be genuine, and some say the court failed to admit part of the petitioner's bundle of evidence on a technicality. So if you're interested to know much about this story, go to page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper this morning, and still on the front pages there, Sarah Cohen to pick her clothes, makeup, kids today. All right, that's a legal tussle that the widow of the late Tob Cohen finds herself in. And of course, what else is happening? I'll not go back to Garissa, says terror survivor, and also Kenyatta makes 10-minute speech, leaves Ruto in church. It's very interesting because President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy yesterday were attending a church service there. AIC, I think they're installing a new leader of the church, and they both attended that service. And what? Let me just take a quick look. It's on the Star newspaper here on page 6, and all right, page 6. Tired of waiting, DP Ruto allies call for a PG meeting. That's okay. And Uhuru makes short speech, then leaves Ruto. So President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President Ruto yesterday kept off politics as they met for the first time in public in the new year. They met at the AIC Milimani during the installation of the new AIC presiding Bishop Abraham Mulwa, and organizers had to interrupt the program and allow President Kenyatta to make his speech, after which he left immediately to attend to family commitments. All right, so it was not anything sinister. The president seems to have had other things that are required for his attention there, and still not much there on the Star newspaper. And on the front pages of the Daily Nation, Ruto allies retreat to counter Raila wave. I think we've looked at that. And unnecessary admissions test and tricks hospitals use to make money. And of course, the Daily Nation has carried out an investigation, and it says our investigation into Kenya's healthcare reveals a pipeline structure where patients are seen as customers and hospitals ensure they pay as much as possible. And still on the front pages there, basketball great Kobe Bryant dies in helicopter accident in the US that happened yesterday. And remember, he died alongside his daughter Gia, who was 13 years old. So very sad there. And of course, Raila had an interview that happened yesterday on the Nation television, and he revealed his family's wealth, which is about 2 billion Kenya shillings, and he's saying that is the total accumulative wealth that all of his family has. And he said, after being asked, because he said people think he's very wealthy, but this was his response. He says our father father, Odinga, died a poor man. There is nothing inherited from him as his children. It must be remembered that throughout his life, he was in government for only 2.5 years. So there it is. If you want to know more about the story, or if you did not watch the interview yesterday, you can go to the Daily Nation, page 6. And all right, so there we are. So okay, so now let's just look at what other news is making headlines across Africa this morning. John Clark, thank you so much for joining. And the rest of you, Gremta Susu, Jablosk Onyango, and who else? A lot of people, Jidozi Maduboise, something like that. Thank you so much. So let's just now look at what else is making, news across Africa. And we should just take a look at the Transparency International corruption index that was released a couple of days ago. And yesterday, I think we were here talking about South Sudan, how second years in a row, it is the second most corrupt countries after Somalia. And we shall look at other countries just briefly. But let's start with Zimbabwe. And Zimbabweans are protesting after the Chief Justice in the country invited Ugandan judge to train judges in anti-corruption. The news was not received well by Zimbabweans online, who have said that Uganda was not the best country to learn from. Zimbabwe's Chief Justice Luke Malaba told journalists that Justice Lawrence Gidundu, who heads Uganda's anti-corruption court, will conduct a week-long training course in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Now, Justice Malaba said Zimbabwe has a lot to learn from Uganda, and that has prosecuted and jailed corrupt people for years. Now, Uganda was ranked better than Zimbabwe in Transparency International 2019 Corruption Perception Index, and Uganda was number 137 out of 180 countries, while Zimbabwe was number 158. But Zimbabwe's neighboring countries, Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa, were ranked better than Uganda by far. We go to Nigeria, where reports from northeastern Nigeria says 2 suicide bombers attacked a mosque during early morning prayers. The attack took place in the town of Goza in the northeastern Borno state on Sunday morning. Reports in the Nigerian media say 3 people died when a suicide bomber ran into a group of worshippers in a mosque during early morning prayers. Other reports say that the only attacker was killed. Sources in the area told the BBC that 2 teenage suicide bombers, a boy and a girl, targeted at the mosque during early morning prayers, killing another teenage boy and wounding a number of worshippers. And still in Nigeria, even after reading that attack that happened in a mosque yesterday in the morning. So now listen, the special advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, now says Nigerians ought to be thankful that the spate of attacks by Boko Haram has dropped. He said that despite the recent bombings and have claimed scores of lives, the impact of terrorism was still less than what Nigerians faced under former President Jonathan Goodluck. Now, Adesina, who is the most senior spokesperson of the president, said that before the regime came into power, about 6 bombs were going off in a day. He said this during an interview on Channel's television Political Today's program on Sunday. And the president's spokesperson also was asked to explain to Nigerians why his principal had failed to deliver on, of course, his key promise, which was to defeat Boko Haram in 100 days. And he said the Northeast under the Buhari regime was like heaven, while that of former President Goodluck Jonathan was hell. He said Nigerians ought to be very thankful for the job being done by the government. And, this is a conversation that we shall have in a moment. Let's just continue with other news. And please let me know your thoughts on this. Is President Buhari and other leaders there in Nigeria living in an alternative world? I just read there some suicide bombers went off earlier yesterday in the morning in a mosque, attacking, worshippers who had gone there for the early prayers. And every day, like I said here, if I come here today in the morning, I'll come with some news about some deaths that have been, caused by Boko Haram. And for sure, I have. And there's still others from Mali. There's still others from other parts of the world, of Africa, that I did not manage to prepare on time. But it is happening. So I don't know when this spokesperson of President Muhammadu Buhari issues such a statement. Are they living in an alternative world or someplace outside of Nigeria? and they're really out of touch with what is really happening there in parts of Nigeria. I don't understand. So let's just move on to Ivory Coast, where health officials are dealing with a suspected case of coronavirus in Ivory Coast. The country's health ministry has said an unnamed student who returned to the West African country from Beijing on Saturday is undergoing further tests after showing flu-like symptoms. If confirmed, it will be the first case of the deadly virus in Africa. The virus, which first emerged in the Chinese city of Wuhan, has spread to over 2,000 people and killed 56 people so far. And we go to Burundi, where Burundi's governing party, the CNDD-FDD, has chosen its Secretary General as the party's presidential candidate in the upcoming election in May. Evariste Ndayishimiye is among the most influential political figures in Burundi and a close ally of President Pierre Nkurunziza. Last week, the government agreed to award Mr. Nkurunziza $530,000 and a luxury villa, and Mr. Nkurunziza, who has been in power since 2005, will not seek a new term. Mr. Ndayishimiye, who is 52 years old, is a former Minister of Interior Security and runs the Department of Military Affairs in the President's office. We go to Sudan, where 2 regions of Sudan have been granted special status following talks between Sudanese authorities and the rebel group South Sudan People's Liberation Movement North. It means a rebel-controlled South Kordofan and Blue Nile will be allowed to draft their own laws. AFP news agency quotes SPLM and North Deputy Leader Yassir Said Arman as saying disputes over land are another long-standing challenge the rebels say they want to solve. This preliminary deal was signed in the neighboring South Sudan, and it is hoped that with further talks it will pave the way for reconciliation. And we go to Tanzania, where Tanzanian opposition member of parliament, Zitto Kabwe, and a coalition of local civil society organizations have written to the World Bank, urging it to withhold a pending loan to the government because of human rights concerns. In 2018, the bank withheld $300 million, a loan meant for improving secondary education after President John Pombe Magufuli ordered pregnant schoolgirls be banned from attending school. Another reason given for not approving the loan was the passing of a law to jail people who question official statistics. What? The statistics law was amended last year to remove the threat of jail, but the government has yet to announce the changes to the rules on teenage pregnancy. What? Magufuli, come on. All right. And we go to Gambia, where hundreds of Gambians on Saturday called for the arrest and prosecution of the country's former president, Yahya Jammeh, arguing that the victims of his 22-year-old deserve justice. And Jammeh, of course, ruled Gambia with an iron fist, but fled in January 2017 after losing a presidential election to relatively unknown Adama Barrow, which he refused to acknowledge before being forced out of power by a popular uprising. Now, wearing T-shirts that read #Justice Must Prevail, protesters marched in the outskirts of the capital Banjul, holding photographs of people killed or who have gone missing, including AFP correspondent Deida Haidara, who was gunned down on the 16th of December 2014 by Jammeh's henchmen. And we go to South Sudan, where South Sudan is staring at another failed attempt to form a transitional government on February 22nd, after all the opposition parties rejected calls for arbitration on the differences over a number of states. Now, both the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement in opposition, SPLM-IO, led by Dr. Riek Machar, and the South Sudan Opposition Alliance, SSOA, led by Dr. Lam Akol, have rejected suggestions by South Africa's Deputy President David Mabuza to have the matter go for arbitration for 90 days, which would be long after the formation of the transitional government. Now, Mr. Mabuza, after failing seemed to have the parties agreed to the number of states, had proposed to refer the matter for arbitration to the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, a regional body that deals with peace and the African Union. Now, according to James Oriema, the SPLM-IO representative who is in Kenya, all the parties have moved closer to 24+1, with the exception of the government that insisted on remaining with the 32 states. This meant that the country will be divided into 24 states, former districts, plus the capital Juba, that was to remain neutral. All right. Remember, today we are counting, is it about what? 28 days to go to the peace deal there in South Sudan, and now you can hear all this news that is coming from that country. And of course, that is the latest from Africa this morning. If there's anything I've left out where you are and you'd like to share it with us, please feel free to do so, and I will read and share with the rest of, Africa. So thank you so much, Charles Kamuli. You're saying, where is Dr. Nyekorach Matanga? I want him to enlighten me on Uganda situation as for now. Charles Kamuli, you seem to just have missed him. I was having a conversation with him here through the telephone. He's not in studio today, but he should be here either tomorrow or the next day. And so, but hey, what do you want to know about Uganda? Of course, he has a lot of information about Uganda, but let me know if at all it is something that we can discuss together. Please share, and then we can have a conversation about it as we normally have. And I was just finished reading the African news this morning, just a few things that have been happening in the continent. But, Oh, and also this one news I almost forgot here. And South Africa has appointed a new ambassador to Rwanda, ending almost 1 year of no representation in the country. In December 2018, a South Africa ambassador to Kigali, George Nkosinata Twala, was summoned to Pretoria and later permanently recalled in February 2019, following a bitter exchange between diplomats from both countries. Rwanda's State Minister for Regional Affairs, Olivia Nduhungirehe, confirmed to the East African that Rwanda had accredited the new ambassador but could not disclose his name, noting that Rwanda does not have control on the actual date that the ambassador will arrive in Kigali. So I don't know if South Africa and Kigali are there trying to mend, the friendship, because the countries' diplomatic ties have been very sour, because a lot of people who have gone against President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, they ran to South Africa. And we've seen a lot of people who in South Africa who perhaps used to work in Paul Kagame's government or are very close allies but disagreed, and their lives they felt were in danger in Rwanda, so they took off. Others were found, like one was found dead here in Kenya, was killed, and several of them have been killed in South Africa in hotels, driving by the roads, so it has been very disturbing. So South Africa protested this, and even after removing one of its, now the ambassador they removed there in 2018, it was after the killing of another Rwandese who had run there, who used to be a very close ally of President Paul Kagame. And so South Africa severed ties with Rwanda. And so Rwanda is accusing actually South Africa of harboring these people who perhaps are plotting to get him out of power. I don't know, but Rwanda has not been very comfortable with the fact that South Africa is able to, give asylum to the people who once were close allies to President Paul Kagame, and once they feel that they've lost ties or the severe ties, and they feel their lives are no longer safe being in and around Rwanda, so they take off and they go seek for safer havens for themselves. So South Africa has been very welcoming indeed, and it has a good number of Rwandese refugees. So does other countries in Africa, and indeed in Kenya we have a good number of Rwandese here, who others have settled, others are just trying to make do. But so Rwanda has not been very comfortable in that regard, and so they've always been some sort of, like a silent war, like a cold war between these two countries. So let's just see if this move by South Africa appointing its new ambassador to Rwanda, if this at all will help mend the bad blood between these two countries, and perhaps diplomacy will be restored. And so, of course, in December 2018, South Africa ambassador to Kigali, George Nkosinata Twala, was summoned to Pretoria and later permanently recalled in February 2019 following a bitter exchange between diplomats from both countries. And I think I was here and I did that news. I can't remember exactly what the exchange was, but it was terrible and, on social media, and it did not augur well by those both sides of, both the two countries. And so, yeah, so let's see, if this time round, South Africa and Rwanda will be able to, have a sit down and find a solution to this problem that they are having. And I hope that they can do that. So right now, I'd like for us to look at Zimbabwe, of course, the country that we started with, and very interesting happenings there in Zimbabwe. And of course, yes, it's a few days ago, the Chief Justice of Zimbabwe announced that he is inviting a Ugandan judge to come and train judges in Zimbabwe on anti-corruption. Now, the news was not received well by Zimbabweans for obvious reasons, and who have said that Uganda was not the best country to learn from. I don't know what is your position on this. I don't know what you think. Zimbabweans' right to feel that the Ugandan judge perhaps is not the right person to learn from. What is it that justifies their cause? And they've been castigating their Chief Justice very much. And I was just going through some tweets and some responses by Zimbabweans who really are not happy by this move by the Chief Justice to invite the Ugandan judge to train other judges on anti-corruption. And so they were saying, come on now, there are actually other better African countries who rank very well or when it comes to matters corruption, who could actually be of benefit to the judiciary here in Zimbabwe, and who could help our judges in terms of on anti-corruption war. And so, Transparency International report on corruption index was just released a couple of days ago. And, of course, the leading country there is Denmark, followed by New Zealand, Finland, Sweden, then Switzerland. Those are the top 5 countries. And then the mighty United States of America comes in at number 23. Come on now. And also now the top African countries, Botswana, which sits at number 34, Rwanda at number 51, Namibia at number 56, Mauritius also at number 56, and Senegal at number 66. So that is just the top 5 of Africa countries there. And so Mauritania, Uganda, and Kenya, they both sit at number 137. And so Uganda and Kenya and Mauritania, they are on this, they share the same index. And somebody was saying maybe they should bring somebody from Kenya to come and teach this, Zimbabwean judges. I don't know, it's because Kenya's president has been very vigorous in his war against corruption. I don't know why. That is why perhaps some Zimbabweans are thinking perhaps Kenyans will be better off. As I keep saying here, and I said it yesterday, I even asked here in Kenya, corruption is still a huge issue. Waste of public funds is still a huge issue. Stealing of public funds and just mismanagement in general is still a huge issue. And bribing and all manner of corruption that happens in this country. But so it is a work in progress. I don't know, we take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back, something like that. But it seemed to be moving towards some direction. I don't know if it's the right direction, but we seem to be moving towards a certain direction. And of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta has kept saying, and even just the other day when he was giving his speech, he was saying, he's not going to relent on his war against corruption, and he'll go after anybody that is corrupt. And we saw that when the judiciary of Kenya, they had that event. Was it on Thursday? Yes, thereabout. And they were launching the report on the judiciary. And of course, President Kenyatta expressed his concerns and of course said he will work with the judiciary, but also said that he's not happy about some of these corruption cases are handled. The leniency in our court system that gives these people, a leeway. There's always a leeway that people are able to walk away scot-free. So he's always expressed that disappointment when it comes to our judiciary. And perhaps he challenged the judiciary judiciary to do more, and especially said when you're going to prosecute some of these cases, you have to put the country first. I don't know. I guess the judiciary puts the law first and looks at the cases based on what the laws says here in Kenya. So, Chief Justice David Maraga several times have come out and said, whatever we are brought, that is what we look at. The evidence that our courts receive, that is what we look at. So, if the investigators, if the police do not bring, waterproof, evidence in the court, then the court can only work with what it has been given, and so that has. And they say sometimes they do very shoddy, investigations. So when it's brought to court, the case is just dead on arrival. So a lot of high-profile cases are going on in the Kenyan court this year, and so Kenyans are just sitting and watching and seeing how will the judiciary, handle these cases. So I understand perhaps why some Zimbabweans would feel, why is it that the Chief Justice in Zimbabwe will be inviting a Ugandan judge to come and talk to them about anti-corruption, while they have their own foreign affairs minister who cannot even travel to the United States right now because he was caught in a scandal, in a bribery scandal, corruption scandal, and he benefited. And one of his partners, who are Chinese, is already serving term, but the country still keeps him as its minister, has refused to fire him. He's still awarded. He's still walking scot-free. No investigations are happening in Uganda. And so it's very interesting. And I know we're not better off. Anyway, so Zimbabwe's Chief Justice Luke Malaba told journalists that Justice Lawrence Dudu, that is the justice from Uganda, who heads Uganda's anti-corruption court, will conduct a week-long training course in Zimbabwe. I guess the training is supposed to be starting today, or being a Monday, I guess. I don't know. And so the last, of course, Zimbabwe stands at number 158. That is according to the Transparency International Corruption Index 2019. That I said was released a few days ago. Zimbabwe stands at number 158. And of course, the last top 5 countries in Africa is the last top 5 countries in that index. I read the first top 5 countries, which is led by Denmark and New Zealand, Finland, Sweden, and Switzerland. And now the last bottom 5 countries at number 173 is Sudan, 177 is Yemen, 178 is Syria, at number 179 is South Sudan, and at 180 is Somalia. So what these countries, what do they have in common? There has been some years of civil war, or at least some parts of the country have been experiencing, some civil war. When you look at this country, I think the record on human rights abuse is very high. So poor governance as well. So these are just some of the things. So the corruption, let me just, in case you're wondering, this Transparency International report, what it's all about. According to Wikipedia, the Corruption Perceptions Index is an index published annually by Transparency International since 1995, which ranks countries by their perceived levels of public sector corruption as determined by expert assessments and opinion surveys. Now, the CPI generally defines corruption as the misuse of public power for private benefit. Oh, wow. That is just like, you should put the African leaders just next to that. Now, the 2019 CPI, published in January of 2020, currently ranks 180 countries on a scale of from 100, which is very clean, to 0, which is highly corrupt. Denmark, New Zealand, and Finland are perceived as the least corrupt nations in the world, of course, ranking consistently high among international financial transparency, while the most perceived corrupt countries in the world is Somalia, ranking at 9 to 10 out of 100 since 2017. And South Sudan is also perceived as one of the most corrupt countries in the world due to constant social and economic crisis, ranking an average score of 13 out of 100 in 2018. And recently. So that's not very good sign there. And I think yesterday we talked about this regards to South Sudan. So I don't know what the leadership there of South Sudan. And speaking about South Sudan, we're done with that Zimbabwe matter. And of course, Zimbabweans are not very happy that the Chief Justice of that country is inviting a judge from Uganda to come and carry out a training for a week on anti-corruption. Yes, Zimbabweans are saying no. Could we not even go for Botswana then? It's the one that is leading in Africa. Could we not try Rwanda or Namibia or Mauritius? Come on now. They're countries in the southern part of Africa that actually did very well compared to our countries over here in the east and other parts. They're saying Zimbabwe should have gone to some countries there in southern Africa because their corruption index is much better, is much improved, and that would have made sense to Zimbabweans. So at this point, they're not feeling this training by Justice Lawrence Gidudu, who is from Uganda and is coming to have 1 week training on anti-corruption. All right. And so, before we talk about South Sudan, let's just look at Nigeria and what is happening in Nigeria this morning. And of course, as I read there earlier, reports from northeastern Nigeria say 2 suicide bombers attacked a mosque during early morning prayers. That happened yesterday. And yesterday, we were here during the Africa Showdown show. I said, you know what? I did not have the whole, full African news, but when I come here in the morning, there will be some fresh attacks. There will be some news about attacks in Nigeria, if not in Mali, if not in Niger, if not in other African countries, that Boko Haram is really causing mayhem across Africa. And true to this, today in the morning, I'm reading yesterday, there are some kills and some deaths that were caused, and also in Mali. I did not bring that news, but yes, Boko Haram caused some deaths there in Mali as well. And what really shook me, I'm shook. Yeah, I'm shook this morning. But you know why? It's top of the hour. It's midday. It's midday here in Nairobi. The special advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, came out and said Nigerians ought to be very, very thankful that the spate of attacks by Boko Haram has dropped. All right? He said despite the recent bombings that have claimed scores of lives, the impact of terrorism was still less than what Nigerians have faced during under former President Jonathan Goodluck. Now, Adesina, who is the most senior spokesperson for President Buhari, said before the regime came into power, about 6 bombs were going off in a day. All right. He said this during an interview in Channels Television's Political Today's program yesterday. And also he said that he asked Nigerians, he was being asked, why is it that President Buhari has failed to deliver on one of his key promises, which was getting rid of Boko Haram in 100 days, which he has been defeated. He said that Northeast under Buhari regime was like heaven. So the northeastern part of the country, which I just read here, some suicide bombs went off yesterday and killed a number of people and has been going off. Last week, there was some news, there were some deaths reported. The other week, like it has been day after day after day of attacks and deaths that are being reported on innocent civilians there in Nigeria. And the president's spokesperson comes out, Mr. Femi Adesina, and says that Northeast under President Buhari, that part that bombs have been going off, that part that has been marred with activities of Boko Haram, that part that Boko Haram is, actually the people in charge in that part, he's coming out and saying, no, under Buhari's regime, that part has been like heaven. Well, that of former President Jonathan Goodluck felt like hell. He said Nigerians ought to be very thankful for the job being done by the government. I do not know what you make of this. Please help me understand. And as I was reading this news earlier, I was just wondering, Mr. Buhari surely and his people, special advisor, Mr. Femi Adesina, must be living in a totally different alternative world. Because if at all they were present, if at all President Buhari was, no wonder they're not doing anything. Because they think in their small world that has a protection, that has military protection, that they have constant 24 hours protection in their own small world. The rest of Nigeria was safe. Nothing is really happening because Boko Haram, as President Buhari said there a few months ago, was technically defeated. So this thing of Boko Haram causing mayhem and killings there every day in Nigeria is something that is not really happening. Except in the grounds, the statistics are different. Because day after day after day we come here and we have news on what kind of mayhem Boko Haram is causing that part of Nigeria. So is Mr. Buhari and his government really, really in touch with the reality in Nigeria? Is Mr. Buhari worried that one of the key promises he made when he was being elected for his first term was to get rid of Boko Haram? But in actuality, there's nothing he has done in regards to that promise. He's not even been seen to be making even any progress in terms of, getting rid of Boko Haram. And if this is how they're thinking, if this is what a whole presidential media and publicity, basically a communications person, comes out, and when he speaks, he's not speaking for himself, he's speaking for the government of Buhari, he's speaking for President Buhari himself, and he's coming out and saying, you know what, Nigerians ought to be thankful. What? Nigerians ought to be thankful? What do you mean? Are you doing Nigerians a favor by offering them their security? Are you doing Nigerians a favor by being their president? I don't think so. Is President Buhari doing Nigerians a favor by him being there as the president and by him being the person who's supposed to be ensuring that Nigerians are safe across and within the borders of Nigeria, which has failed in some parts of the country because Boko Haram is running their game there very, very well. And he's coming out and saying this, the communications person of the president here, Mr. Femi Adesina, he's coming out and saying, Nigerians ought to be thankful. Ought to be thankful? Like Nigerians owe you. Like the government is doing a favor to protect its people. Like the government is doing its people a favor. You were elected to be there and ensure, and you took oath of office to protect, number one, the Constitution, which you violate with impunity, and number two, the lives and people of Nigeria within the borders of that country, and even outside. If there's an aggression that threatens the people of Nigeria as a president and as a head of state, your responsibility is to make sure none of them is hurt. This is. I found this to be quite. I don't know. I didn't even know how to make of this news that Nigerians ought to be thankful. Ought to be thankful. I just don't understand. And so he said that I don't know. At some point, he sounded like what President Donald Trump is. Every time something goes wrong, he always has to go back and compare. But President Obama did this. But President Obama did this. But I'm doing this. And President Obama, he's always trying to outdo the former president, even when he's just on the wrong, even when the two cannot even compare. So he's always having issues. So he came out and said that during the reign of former President Jonathan Goodluck, that part of the country, the northeast of Nigeria, was hell. But now under President Buhari, it has been like heaven. I don't even know Nigerians who are watching me, Biafrans who are watching me, who have the inside story, who understands what's really happening there in Nigeria. Please share your minds with me. I just want to hear your opinion and see what this special advisor to the president, basically the communications person to the president there, came out and said, our Nigerians ought to be very thankful that the spate of attacks by Boko Haram has dropped to what? I wish we could get the official record of how many people have been killed since the start of this year. the start of this year alone, since January 1st to today, January 27th, if you can get the statistics and see how many people have been mutilated, how many Nigerians and other people have died just in Nigeria alone. Forget what is happening in Burkina Faso, because also they've bore the brand of Boko Haram. Forget the many soldiers who have been dying in Nigeria. Forget the Chadians, the Malians who have died, just in Nigeria itself. Yeah, even in Cameroon, in the border between Nigeria and Cameroon, a lot of people have died. So I don't know. I don't know what the president and his office are thinking. What they are saying that attacks by Boko Haram have dropped. I don't know. They seem to be living in an alternative world. But anybody who has information there, perhaps, just let me know what your thoughts are. Arthun Deng, you're saying international transparency, or the other one who reported against the country is human being, and they're just lying, because when their interest is considered, then they turned against and spoiled some countries' names. Oh, so you're saying this report is just a blackmail, we should not trust. But it has been used a lot, especially by World Bank, and especially by other international bodies when they're using the statistics there from the TI to do other things with. So you're saying the Transparency International uses this ranking on, corruption index to blackmail some countries if you don't do what they want, if you don't give in to some of their needs or requirements. So they're going to blackmail you by making sure they mess up the reputation of your country. The United States of America stands at number 23. By this huge yardstick they normally has on us, I would think, the US perhaps will be at number 5, but no. The leading countries: Denmark, New Zealand, Finland, Sweden, Switzerland, and then the US comes in at number 23. And of course, the first African country in this Transparency International, report that does well in terms of corruption. Fighting corruption, and it's Botswana, followed by Rwanda, which stands at number 51. Botswana is number 34, Rwanda number 51, Namibia number 56, of course Mauritius also at number 56, and Senegal comes 5th on that list in African countries who has better standings there at number 66. Kenya, Uganda, Mauritania are at number 137. All right. Chief Bestus, if you're saying Buhari and his Northerners leaders, brothers, are the people sponsoring Boko Haram. Well, they've come out and said, the attacks of Boko Haram have really dropped. And he's saying that Nigerians ought to be thankful because, living now in the northeast part of the country under Buhari regime is like being in heaven. But when President Jonathan Goodluck was the president there, it was like hell. I don't know why he finds the need to compare himself with former President Jonathan Goodluck, because when Nigerians will be looking at your legacy, they'll not be looking, they'll just be looking at what is it that your presidency, Mr. Buhari, has been able to achieve in this amount of time that you are the president of that country. So they'll be judging you under that. What have you achieved? How have you transformed their lives? What is it that you've done? Have you lived up to your own promises? Those are some of the things the Nigerians and history will judge you there, not compared to. So I don't know. You're saying that Boko Haram, they release them and recruit them into the Nigerian army. Yes, I've heard these claims, and if that is true, then that is really very sad. So Burundi, of course, President Pierre Nkurunziza, I was very skeptical when I heard that he was retiring. I was like, no, but anyway, I think sense have been able to prevail, and I really must commend him. I don't know why I must commend him, because remember, he changed the constitution in 2015 that made the country go into a civil war that cost a lot of lives, and a lot of refugees are still all over, especially in East Africa. Some Burundians who ran away from the country after 2015 attempted coup when President Pierre Nkurunziza, changed the constitution to allow him a third term. So, according to the changes he made to that constitution, he was actually supposed to stay in power until like 2034 or thereabout. So I'm shocked that sense has prevailed in his head, and now he's retiring. So the party endorsed the Secretary General. He was chosen to be the flag bearer of the CNDD-FDD party. That is the ruling party there in Burundi, and his name is Evariste Ndayishimiye. Let's just stick with Evariste. I think that is much easier on my tongue. All right, there in Burundi, and is a very close ally to President Pierre Nkurunziza. I don't know why these presidents of Africa have not learned anything yet from what is happening in a country like Botswana, from what is happening in a country like Angola, which right now, the president right now, Yao Lourenço, is going after former president, who was also a very close ally, who the former president, Mr. Dos Santos, gave him his blessings and said, you know what, after 38 years in power, I think I need to get somebody that I would trust as the president, even after Dos Santos retired. So he went and picked somebody that he'd worked with for a very long period of time. He trusted very much, and he was a very close ally. And now he became the president. But after a while, tides changed, and now they're not even seeing eye to eye. And as we speak right now, Lourenço has gone after the former first child, the first daughter of Dos Santos, Isabel Dos Santos, who is the richest woman in Africa, over some monies that they're saying she swindled from the country, and she's facing corruption charges and money laundering, and there in Angola. And the other day I saw Isabel threatened to sue Angola's government for what she says is wrong accusations there. So this is a case that is going on. So when I see a country like Burundi, and I'm just wondering, have they not learned from anything in the past? And also we saw in DRC, of course it's not playing out very outright, but you can tell the politics in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Remember, there were, wide speculations there that opposition leader Martin Fayulu was actual winner of the presidential elections that took place there on 2018 December elections that happened on, I think, 30th December 2018 elections. That later on, of course, last week, President Tshisekedi was celebrating 1 year after being inaugurated as president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So what has happened? Martin Fayulu, even the Catholic Church, France, other countries had come out and said he is the winner of the presidential elections. But after that, the Electoral Commission took time before it even announced, the presidential elections. And so President Kabila made a deal with Tshisekedi, who it sort of came a third distance. But according to, the Electoral Commission in the DRC, they placed President Tshisekedi as the winner of that election. And so President Kabila had a secret meeting with Tshisekedi before he was announced, before the announcement that he was the winner of that election. And I think they agreed on a working formula. But after Mr. Tshisekedi was sworn in as the president there in the DRC, we saw how things stand out. Remember, President Kabila and his party still leads that, still have a very huge influence in that country, because even in the cabinet of Mr. Tshisekedi, 60%, is it 60 or 66%, of the cabinet ministers come from President Joseph Kabila's party, because he leads in the parliament. He has more members in parliament and in other leadership positions. So basically, Mr. Tshisekedi has to dance to the tune of Mr. Kabila, which saw them, wrangle for a very long time. Mr. President Tshisekedi not being able to appoint a prime minister, because it has to come from a side with majority members of parliament. So the person that former President Kabila had flaunted, Mr. Tshisekedi did not work with that person, but later on they agreed, but not really. And so Mr. Tshisekedi seems to be working there in the DRC with his hands tied to the back, but they had entered a compromising, agreement together with former President Joseph Kabila. So when I see this news of President Pierre Nkurunziza, handpicking this person and choosing, of course, this presidential candidate who comes from his own party, who is also the Secretary General, perhaps thinking that this person will, cover him. Perhaps this person will look after his interests. Perhaps this person will not go after him. I'm just wondering, have they seen what has been happening in Botswana after former President Ian Khama, handpicked the now President Mogwetsi Masisi, who was elected for his second term last year in October, but they were very tight allies, political allies, Mr. Ian Khama and Mogwetsi Masisi there in Botswana. And so Ian Khama handpicked Masisi, thinking, this person will represent my interest here in this country, even as my presidency comes to an end. But when Mr. Masisi came into power, he said, no, I want to be my own person, and I want to make my own decisions, and I want to create new allies, and I have my own vision for this country. So, Mr. Ian Khama, if you can let me just be the president of Botswana. So we've seen the wrangles. In fact, as we speak right now, Ian Khama last year in April joined the opposition. He left the founding party and he joined the opposition and to vote against now president who was re-elected there, as I said, Mogwetsi Masisi. And of course, Ian Khama and the opposition lost. So he must have been the person who I think asked the opposition to go to court and challenge the presidential results. So as we speak, that case is in the High Court there, somewhere in Botswana, and being heard. So it's very interesting. These are just a few examples across Africa about leaders who left power, but they thought handpicking somebody who was a very close ally with them will work out. It has not worked out, right? Not just in Africa, but across the world. And so I don't know, picking of the Secretary General of the party, CNDD, FDD, as the successor of the presidential flag bearer for Pierre Nkurunziza's party. I don't know if this will work out differently this time, but from history we've seen that it has not always worked out right when it comes to succession politics, because the new guy wants to come and prove, but I'm my own man. I want to do my own things, and I have my own ideas. I have my own agendas. I can select the people that I think can work for this country, and I can just do things my way. And they try so much to distance themselves from their predecessors, who sometimes don't feel very good about it. We have seen from the history. And so I don't know if the CNDD party should have just left the party delegates to select their own people who would come out and, vie for the presidential party's flag bearer there. But elections in Burundi will be happening in May, and for my part, I'm very happy, because I'm one of those people who was very skeptical. And when I was reading this news last week, like Pierre Nkurunziza, they're negotiating about his retirement deal here. What? He's leaving? Like, I could not believe he's actually leaving. So of course the government agreed to award him $530,000 US dollars there, and a luxury villa. Yeah, from a country who cannot even take care of their own election. From a country where, I remember last year, Mr. Nkurunziza did the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. Our leaders across the continent sometimes can be ridiculous, but Mr. Nkurunziza last year just took the trophy for me. I remember on, Labor Day, 1st of May last year, in a national event where you're supposed to honor the people who are working hard to build your country, to honor the sacrifices of the many Burundians are making to make sure that the economy keep going even in the hard times, who are giving their sweat and blood for the country. But you know what Mr. Nkurunziza did? He brought out his daughter, who was 12 years then, and he gave him a huge amount of money in an envelope because she was a very good girl at home. And so the president thought, the best place to come and award you is just to bring you during the May celebration, the Labor Day celebrations, and award you in public. That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. And also just a few months ago, I don't know, the wife won, I don't remember. So this certificate he was giving to the wife. So he called the press in the State House there in Burundi, and it was like, it's your wife. You left the house in the morning, or rather you stay in the same place, presidential suite or State House, or I don't know what they call it there in Burundi. So you're going to bring her in the office and call a press conference and give her this certificate, and it's what? I mean, so that amounts to abuse of office. I don't know if it was somewhere else in the world, a president bringing his own daughter and awarding him this amount of money on a national celebration day for no reason at all, because she was a good girl. Of course, you're told you're supposed to be a good girl. If you're living under my roof, I'm providing for your food, I'm taking care of you, I expect you to be a good child, period. It's not even, it's not. That is the least you can do. So the president, awarded this daughter during national celebrations there, and among other ridiculous things that he did during his presidency there. And so also last year, he closed down all the major international media outlets that were there in Burundi. And previously also he ordered the United Nations, to remove its offices, to close down its offices there in Burundi on human rights abuse. I think it was something like that. He said, your job is done, we are okay, we are at peace. That was after 2015 that the US had a mission, the United Nations had a mission there in Burundi, and President Pierre Nkurunziza also had that closed down. And so that gave him a lot of problems with the international world. I remember after the attempted coup that happened in 2015, Mr. Pierre Nkurunziza has not left Burundi, so perhaps now he'll be able to travel and just visit other parts of the world. He's not been able to leave Bujumbura for nothing. He's not been able to leave because he was afraid, he could be toppled while he's away. It happened to the first Ghana president, remember? You can be toppled while you're away. You can be toppled. Yes, so he was afraid that would happen. And so he's been in Bujumbura there, which he said he wanted to change as the capital city and I think take it somewhere else. I can't remember where, but he had mentioned that his government had plans of changing Bujumbura from being the capital city to somewhere else. I can't remember where, but that is something that was in the pipelines. I don't know if it ever came to be, or the new president, after being elected in May, will make that happen. But I think on the flip side, Mr. Nkurunziza exiting the politics of Burundi, I think is a good thing, and perhaps will give this country a new clean slate to start, regardless of who will be the president. I don't know if this Secretary General that they've selected to lead this party, should he be elected as the president of Burundi? I'm just hoping that, he will have a different look, and a view and vision for Burundians, and perhaps he'll be able to, close ranks and make new friendships and just open up Burundi to the rest of the world, because as it is today, Burundi is very, very closed. Even getting any news from Burundi, you can Google and Google and Google, because it's very difficult. The government has control over the media in Burundi and what is happening. The government wants to make sure that it controls everything that happens in the country. Same like what is happening in Uganda, should we be truthful, And also in Rwanda, you cannot just speak. Come on, Paul Kagame will come after you very, very quickly. And so it's very interesting there. But I think it's a good thing that he's leaving. I think it's a good thing that he's giving the country a break. And perhaps new leadership will change Burundi. New leadership will bring these refugees who are outside the country. Remember, there are others who have been in Tanzania for quite a while after the 2015 chaos. And Tanzania was taking them there by force last year, and the United Nations was not very happy. And of course, Tanzania has its own problems with the international world. Let me just read some of that. And of course, Tanzania's opposition, now member of parliament, is coming out, Mr. Zibo, Zito Kabwe. I don't know if I totally agree with this move that the opposition member of parliament is making, and some other coalition of local civil society organizations have written to the World Bank urging it to withhold a pending loan to the government because of human rights concerns. Now that in 2018, the bank withheld $300 million, a loan meant for improving secondary education after President John Magufuli ordered pregnant schoolgirls to be banned from attending school. I think this is something that I have always disagreed. Among other things, of course, President Magufuli refused his disapproval of gay rights and things like that also got him into problems. But that is not even a conversation I want to have. But my major problem was when he said that, the young teenagers, pregnant girls, even after having their kids, could not go back to school and get an education, which I thought, two wrongs cannot make a right. They've already messed half, interrupted their lives by having a child at 13, 14, 15, which shouldn't be happening. But unfortunately, it's happening. It's happening in Tanzania. It's happening in Kenya. In fact, 2 years ago, it caused the Ministry of Education a lot of worry because numbers of increased teenage pregnancies was increasing and had gone very high. And the majority of the culprit were the teachers there. All right. So it's very intriguing there. So the Kenyan government, of course, took some measures, and there were laws that were formulated around this. And if you're found, the law will be very harsh on you, especially for the teachers and the adults who engage in this. So in Tanzania, President Magufuli said, if you are a schoolgirl, you're a teenager, you get pregnant, you get out of school, you will not be allowed to continue with your education. And I've always had a problem with this because I once was hosting a women's show, and I used to speak with women from across all board, across every sector, from every background of the society. And sometimes you speak to somebody who perhaps fell pregnant at 13, 14, but they were able to be given another opportunity in life, which they looked at. This is another clean slate that I've been given to better my life, and they go out and make their lives better. And they go to school, they finish, and they're able to take care of these children properly. Because if we stop these girls from going to school, then the poverty cycle will not stop in these families, because these girls who miss out, a lot of them come from families that are disadvantaged, especially in the rural areas, because in town here, in the urban areas, parents are a bit more informed. So if your child gets pregnant, you can have the child, and maybe you're able to have a nanny take care of the baby while your girl continues the education. I've seen that happen in so many different occasions. But down in the village, no, even finding one meal a day is a problem. So this girl, of course, will have to stop the school first, take care of the baby until a certain age, and for them to go back to school. And so President Nkurunziza said, no, if you have become pregnant and you're in school, you cannot go back to school. So at that time, of course, World Bank withheld a lot of money, $300 million that was supposed to be given to support secondary education. I don't know if it was the right move, because perhaps the girls that get pregnant is just a certain percentage of the whole population of school-going kids in Tanzania. So this affected greatly the number of children who would have benefited from this. So I don't know if it was a great move by the World Bank to withhold this money. At the same time, I'm not very happy with that decision by President Magufuli to not allow these girls to go to school. Find out the root problem. Why are girls getting pregnant that early? What is happening in the society? Who should be held responsible? What is missing that perhaps should be reintroduced back? How are we talking? How are we teaching our young girls and our young children, basically boys and girls? Sometimes they find themselves in that mix. So, but banning them, it's not a solution. It is not a solution, period. And so I'm not very happy that he made that pronouncement, but I'm not also very happy that World Bank withheld the $300 million that would have gone and helped a lot of young people there and school-going children there in Tanzania. So when this opposition leader is coming out and saying now they're calling on, they've written to World Bank and said, no, you have to continue with withholding this money. please don't give President Pombe Magufuli any more money to do certain projects because, the ban is still there. And so another reason given for not approving the loan was the passing of a law to jail people who question official statistics. This gave me a little laugh in the morning there. And Emmanuel Malual, I'm coming to South Sudan in a moment. I read some very news that is very worrying. 28 to go towards the 22nd of February deadline. And I have some news that will worry you because I was reading it here and I was worried myself. So just one moment, but let's just finish up with this Tanzania matter. And so these opposition MPs are coming out and with another coalition of local civil society organization in Tanzania, and they've written to the World Bank urging it to continue withholding a pending loan to the government because of the human rights abuse. So it is the same loan that was withheld in 2018, the $300 million that was meant to improve the secondary education there in Tanzania. I don't know if and one also of the reasons is not because President Magufuli ordered for pregnant girls not to attend school, but also another reason that the World Bank gave not to release this funding is because there was a law apparently that the government had passed that anybody questioning official statistics by the government will be jailed. Like, which country are we living in? I don't think that is what, Mwalimu Nyerere perceived. I don't think that was one of the dreams he had when he was looking at Tanzania and in the future. I don't think, Mr. Pombe Magufuli, that is something that Mwalimu Julius Nyerere would have wanted. I'm sure Mwalimu Julius Nyerere would have wanted a society that was more open to dialogue, a society that was more open to different ideas. So if I am questioning, and we saw even here in Kenya, it is in the nature of human beings to question. And especially if a country calls itself democratic, then trust and believe there will be a lot of people with diverse points of views, and any mature country and leadership should be able to be tolerant. All right? Even in Kenya last year, we had I don't know, what was it? Is it the Huduma something? That registration that we have coerced into having? And Kenyans have been questioning it until today. People go to TV stations, to radio stations. We're still questioning why was this exercise taken? What was the statistics? And then we had our census that happened in August last year. Kenyans are still questioning. How is it? According to what we know, this is what this should look like. But according to the statistics by the census team that was carried out in August of last year, this was the result. Why is that? So it is in our nature to question. So apparently, when you're in Tanzania, you're not supposed to question any statistics by the government that you've broken the law. But of course, that was removed. And so but the government has yet to announce changes on the rules on the teenage pregnancy. So I think this is something that President Pombe Magufuli should reconsider. Let those girls go and have another go at life. When you deny them a right to get an education, you're denying them a basic right under the United Nations Charter that I think you've ratified that charter. You've signed to it. You're a member state of the United Nations. So you know if you're denying these children's school-going children age, a right to be in school and to get an education, you are in the years to come. You'll not have a very good population there. When you have a population that is empowered through education, I think as a country, you stand a better chances of even doing better in terms of development and moving forward. So President Pombe Magufuli, perhaps this is one of the things that you can reconsider. Others, I don't care much about, but this I think that you should reconsider. And those members of parliament going out there and telling World Bank not to give the money to Tanzania, perhaps also you should reconsider and perhaps having dialogue with President Pombe Magufuli, because this $300 million was going not to benefit this few number of students, but a whole generation there in Tanzania who are missing out right now. And if you keep writing to the World Bank for them to stop issuing this money, it's not very good for the education sector there, who are going to benefit as a whole in Tanzania. So also you should reconsider and stop writing those letters, and that will attract what looks like sanctions and penalties to the country. Is not very good in the bigger scheme of things. Emmanuel Maluel, thank you so much, and saying congratulations to Pierre Nkurunziza for giving a chance to others. Yes, I think it's a very bold move, and it's a very good thing that he has done. So whether his person becomes the president or not, or another person becomes the president or not, I think that this places Burundi on a good start in terms of just other possibilities outside of the leadership of President Pierre Nkurunziza. And also, I don't know, Emmanuel Maluel, do you think this has anything to do with what happened in Africa last year? When we saw what happened in Algeria after the ousting of President Bouteflika, and also ousting of President Omar al-Bashir, and other African countries, and indeed the world, that have been going through turmoil, especially countries where leaders have stuck to power for longer. So this is a very smart move, I think, on Burundi's president's part, because perhaps when he leaves softly like this, maybe Burundians might forgive him from what happened in 2015. Maybe Burundians will forgive him for mutilating the constitution. Perhaps they can just let him easy to just go rest, and hopefully the new leadership will bring some change that are much needed there in Burundi. So I think it's a very good move on his part, and seeing that he left it very quietly like this, and his demands are not very extravagant, I think, but according to the financial status of that country, perhaps might dent a bit of the economy, but it's not very extravagant. 530,000 US dollars. That is what he wants as his send-off package, and a villa. He did not have a house. The Burundian president, he just wants a villa. Okay, but it's not extravagant. It's not overly extravagant, and so let him just go rest, and let other people have an opportunity to lead Burundi. So I agree with you. And Emmanuel Maluel, you're saying it is time for the international community to sanction Dr. Riek Machar's family if they spoil this peace process. So let's just go straight to South Sudan here. Now that you brought it up, Mr. Emmanuel Maluel, and you're saying South Sudan, the news I had this morning is that South Sudan is staring at another failed attempt to form a transitional government for February 22nd, after all the opposition parties rejected calls for arbitration on the differences over a number of states. All right. So both the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement in opposition, SPLM-IO, led by Dr. Riek Machar, and South Sudan Opposition Alliance, SSOA, led by Dr. Lam Akol, have rejected suggestions by South African Deputy President David Mabuza to have the matter go for arbitration for 90 days, which would be long after the formation of the transitional government. All right. So Mr. Mabuza, after failing to have the parties agree to the number of states, has proposed to refer the matter for arbitration to the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, that is IGAD, a regional body that deals with peace, and together with the African Union. Now, according to James Oryema, the SPLM-IO representative who resides here in Kenya, all the parties have moved closer to 24+1. With the exception of the government that insisted on maintaining the 32 states. This meant that the country would be divided into 24 states, plus, which are former districts, plus the capital Juba that was to remain neutral. So we have a problem. 28 days to the deadline, to the peace deal. We seem to be staring at another failed attempt to form a unity transitional government there in in South Sudan. And this has been a worry for us here. And we talk about South Sudan nearly every day here because it is a concern. And when you look at how leaders who are stakeholders in this peace process handle this matter, sometimes you just worry. And the news that we've been receiving lately coming from South Sudan has been very worrying. So, according to, what's her name, wife to Riek Machar, who is representing the husband, I think I was reading somewhere in the morning, she said by, Mr. Mabuza, the South African vice president, who was the mediator in charge of this, peace, and who was helping them negotiate this states matter, the number of states matter that really has left the whole thing on stalemate. Because he could not really have these people agree, he said, how about we have this matter arbitrated much later, after you've signed the peace deal, after you've met the deadline, that is on the 22nd of February next month. And they said, okay. And I remember over 1 week ago, they came out, issued a press conference together. And I saw Mr. Mabuza was there. I saw representatives from both sides who were there. I saw Honorable Stephen Kalonzo, the Kenyan Special Envoy for South Sudan, was there. And another one, the Special Envoy from Uganda for South Sudan, was there. And other players, other mediators who were helping out in this matter. So now, and they agreed. So now later on, you're coming out, and Riek Machar's wife comes out and said, no. The fact that Mr. Mabuza said that it's okay for us to agree and sign this peace deal and meet this deadline on 22nd of February without actually having solved this state matter means that Mr. Mabuza is agreeing with the government, means that Mr. Mabuza, is siding with one side of the stakeholders. And I'm thinking, why are they bringing out this matter? Why why now? Those talks, that press conference happened with all of those people present, and I'm sure this is the conversations they had inside before they came out and held a press conference to tell the whole world what is really happening in regards to the progress of the peace talks. So they came out and they were there, meaning they supported whatever statement Mr. Mabuza was making. As I said, he was chairing the mediation team there. So now, Mr. Machar and his team and the other South Sudan Opposition Alliance, they've come out and said, no, first of all, we have to talk about the states before we sign this peace deal. We have to talk about the states before we form the unity government. This has to be solved 28 days into the deadline. This has to be taken care of before. Otherwise, if we don't, then it's going to be a problem. Now we are back to stalemate again, and of course, this might be another failed attempt to form a transitional government. I'm just worn out at this point, and I think what it's time that Mr. Emmanuel Malwali is saying it's time for international community to sanction Dr. Riek Machar's family if they spoiled this peace. And Nyaleu Dak Duoba, I think you responded there, and you're responding to Emmanuel, and you're saying how to sanctions him and your Uncle Kir want to take our land and 132 states. All right. I think now it has gotten to other personal attacks there, but I don't know. It's just a back and forth. That at the end of the day, this back and forth is not very, very beneficial for the people of South Sudan, and so I don't know where this leaves the peace process there in South Sudan. Because when weighty matters, I thought that is something that was done and gone. Well, they came out and issued that press conference, and they said that this is something that will be looked at. And Mr. Mabuza was very clear and said, it has been difficult to find a common ground when it comes to the number of states. And I said, now this will be is a matter that will be arbitrated by IGAD. And I thought they agreed, and I thought Machar agreed to that, but now they've come out. Her name is what? The wife? Is it Angelina or who? Angeline? Is it Angela or Angeline? Something like that. She came out and said no. In fact, by Mr. Mabuza proposing that this matter be left to arbitration by IGAD, it's like he's leaning towards one side. By him insisting that we have to meet the deadline without this matter being solved, we don't even trust him now. It seems to be speaking, to be agreeing with the government side, to be agreeing with President Kiir's side. I'm like, but you guys were in the same meeting. You came out together and you issued a statement. What changed? What changed since nearly 2 weeks ago? What happened? What went wrong? What are we looking at? Like, what are you talking about? She was there. I saw her. She was there, and these people who are bringing out these matters now, they were part of the people who came out and were part of that press conference. I did not hear any of them raise a problem there. So what is happening? This back and forth. Is it about Riek Machar or Salva Kiir, or is it about the country of South Sudan? Like, this conversation is getting a bit tired now. As it is now, they refuse to agree on the number of states, And of course, Riek Machar, so what according to James Oriema, the SPLM-IO representative who resides in Kenya, all the parties are moved closer to 24+1 with the exception of the government that insists on maintaining 32 states. So Mr. Kiir's side, is it possible to concede by not insisting on 32 states and just come on perhaps on board and see what is this other side of the team saying? They're proposing 24+1 state, meaning that the country would be divided into 24 states, former districts, plus the capital Juba that shall remain neutral. Why is President Salva Kiir not open to changing his stand on 32 states? Why must it be 32? If everybody else is agreeing on something different, is it so difficult to try to just to listen to the other side? And what really irks me about this story, what really, I don't say annoys me because I don't want to get my feelings too much into it, but what really disturbs me rather is last week, our President Salva Kiir on Friday actually commended two regions of Sudan that were able to bring to have a peaceful agreement on Friday. Let me just read that news item here. And the two regions of Sudan have been granted special status following talks between Sudanese authorities and the rebel group Sudan People's Liberation Movement North, SPLM-N. It means rebel-controlled South Kordofan and Blue Nile will be allowed to draft their own laws. And AFP news agency quotes SPLM-N Deputy Leader Yasir Said Arman as saying that disputes over land and other outstanding challenges that the rebels say they want to resolve. And it continues. And then later on, I think part of that news also said that President Salva Kiir, who has been mediating this peace process, was very happy with the progress that was made there. He was able to, even to convince Sudan to allow these regions, not Kordofan and this other part of Sudan, to have a special status and have their own laws. And do you think it's an easy thing? It's not. But President Salva Kiir was able to convince that, and that peace deal was signed on Friday. And he congratulated the players, and he was very happy with the outcome of that. But I don't understand what happens when it comes to his own country. So Joseph Otto Manasseh, you're saying South Sudan agreement is dead. Slowly but sure, I think the government side is just a die-hard behavior. And Nyaleo Dak Duop, you're saying more excuses, no peace. You know what? I'm just very disappointed at this point. And I thought that they've been coming out, meeting. Mr. Riek Machar has been traveling to Juba. They come out and they tell us, you know what, we are committed to this peace deal. We shall make this happen. We don't mind about, the states. This is matter that South Sudanese right now, they need peace, not states. So we shall discuss this much later. And all this, you're coming out and telling us, no, this is something that should be resolved now. Well, there will be a stalemate. Well, This will just be another tactic of asking for more extension. Do you not understand that the world is getting wary of this situation in South Sudan? Do you not understand that the people of South Sudan every day are losing trust and confidence in their own leadership because of things like this? I'm over it, you know. And Nyaleo Dak, I hope you're saying, I just want people for South Sudan's people are tired being in camps. Yeah, South Sudanese are tired, spending half of their lives in refugee camps. Children who were born in refugee camps years ago were returned in the refugee camps. You know, after South Sudan became a country, and they were happy they have their, they have a country, and then 2 years later, the war broke, and it has been very difficult years for the people of South Sudan. And the leaders are going to sit there and discuss about the number of states. They cannot agree because, you know, they are too egocentric to realize that the interests of the people in a country and the country itself is much important than their own personal interest. That really, I don't like that at all. And so I think it is time the people of South Sudan really spoke up and just wherever you are, I'm sure your leaders can listen in whatever form. You need to speak to these people and tell them what you think, and tell them, you know what, they need to put the people of South Sudan first. They need to put the country of South Sudan first, because now from this information here, I don't know if finding peace, if meeting this deadline will happen, because there's a trip there that Riek Machar made a few days ago to Juba, and they came out and they said yes, the whole process is going on so far, and they agreed with what Mr. Mabuza said. So now for Angeline, is that the name of Mr. Machar's wife, Angeline, something like that? She came out, and of course she's speaking on behalf of the husband and the party and SPLMIO. She came out and said, no, with Mr. Mabuza proposing that we should have these states arbitrated way after the signing of the peace agreement, then he seems to be siding with President Riek Machar's side. He seems to be biased. He seems to be taking sides. Mr. Mabuza has nothing else to do, you know, and the rest of the team that are working with him, everybody else, they've tried to give every option possible. You have refused. They even took all the number of states suggested by everyone and tried to divide it by get an average. You all refused. They tried. In fact, I hear the talks, there's a time went to nearly 24 hours. You refused. President Salva Kiir has stuck to 32 states. This other team has agreed 24 plus 1, which is 24, which will be the number of districts, and then plus 1, which is Juba. And Juba, they're saying, should remain a neutral place. What is the common ground? Do they take 24 plus 1 plus 32 and then divide by 2 or by 3? I don't know. It's a stalemate that shouldn't be there. It is a situation that the political class are creating there in South Sudan that should not be there. And I think whatever it is, now that United Nations report that was presented to the United Nations Security Council report that said that, the leadership of South Sudan is actually benefiting from the chaos that is present in that country. This plays into that report, because why? Why else would you not want peace to return in your country? Why else are you fighting so hard for the country not to be stable, Mr. President and opposition leader Riek Machar and other stakeholders? Why is it that you're bringing issues right now? Well, it's only 28 days to go, if I'm not wrong, to 22nd of February, where the world is watching and see if you can sign that peace deal and the country can start healing and moving forward as the rest of the world. Why? Why are you always looking for excuses after excuses? If in that meeting you all agreed that the matter of states will be arbitrated by IGAD and the African Union, which might not be the right people to take care of this matter, by the way, because the interests that sometimes are represented there. And the AU in handling certain matters does not have a very good track record. So, maybe not much to expect from that. But that was the agreement, and you agreed. You agreed to that. All right? So there is power struggle within Machar's family, and Angelina has different statements. Oh, she does. Okay. So this is a man and a woman. So now their personal problems and differences is coming into play, and the whole country has to suffer for that. And both leaders need to step down. We are tired of excuses and acting like they don't care about people of South Sudan. Riek been to Juba how many times and never visit people in the camps? Because they don't care. Riek Machar comes to Juba. Does he go to the camps? No. President Salva Kiir resides there. Does he go to the camps? No. Does he care? Not quite much. I'm just tired of these excuses they're giving. And on that very tiring note, I think I'll just say my goodbyes for today. And thank you so much for your company. Remember, at the start of the show, I had an interview there with a phone call, a conversation with Dr. David Matsanga, who is away but should be back here either tomorrow or the next day. And we looked at what's happening, the current situation and politics around the Jubilee Party here in Kenya. And what I've looked at the front pages of the leading Kenya's newspapers, and of course, very sad basketball great Kobe Bryant died yesterday in a helicopter crash, together with his 13-year-old daughter, among other people who had boarded that plane. So, we are continuing to pass our condolences, and indeed the world and the sports, and everybody else. He seems to be a very nice guy who was loved, and he transcended beyond just NBA. You could see even other athletes from different sports really celebrated his life and mourning him. That happened yesterday. So thank you so much. I hope to see you here tomorrow for another edition of Good Morning Africa. But for now, my name is Miriam Ogutu. It is bye-bye.